Hello. Well, hello, guys. It's Christine. And good morning to you. So, look at that. You can take a girl out of Chicago, but you can't take the Chicago out of the girl, right? So, first of all, I want to say, with my most, oh my gosh, just such a absolute heartfelt gratitude for the just enormous amount of text, calls, emails, Facebook posts, Facebook questions, IM, DM, whatever that's called, in response to my episode video the other day. Hi guys, thanks so much for joining. You have absolutely no idea how much my heart is warmed by the love and compassion and empathy that I have received for my video. First off, I want to start out and say, for years, and I mean years, I hid in closets, I hid in bathrooms, I locked doors so that my kids couldn't see me. I would do whatever I had to so that nobody could see my craziness that I thought I had, or was whatever was going on with me. That's my magnesium. So, anyway, back to the reason that I'm here is because I have had such, just an absolutely incredible amount of response regarding my episodes, and I really wanted to, some great questions and a lot of really great comments. So I really kind of wanted to go over a few things and answer some of those, because I'm sure there are people that had those questions that didn't ask them, and I'm sure there's other questions. And please feel free. Ask me any question. No question is off limits. Matter of fact, if this wasn't a public platform, I would give you some extremely personal information that would shock you. But it's too personal to share, I think. At the moment, I'm still a little embarrassed over some parts of it. So anyway, okay. So first off, I wanted to start out. This is really kind of pardon me, I'm taking my potassium and it makes me belch. Thanks for all the love, guys. So first I wanted to start out to let you know that the actual diagnosis that we believe that I have is hypokalemic periodic paralysis and paramyotonia congenita. Now, with that said, obviously, there's a lot of genetic stuff that goes into that, and sometimes it's a mutation based on an attack on the immune system, and so it's not something that's seen genetically. So it's a very complicated diagnosis. As you can tell, it took me 35, 40 years to get there. So I wanted to say, first of all, hypokalemic periodic paralysis is a gene mutation caused in a malfunction in certain ion channels in the muscle membrane. Ion channels are tiny pores that allow the ions or molecules of sodium, potassium to move through the membrane. So basically meaning the potassium leaks out of my cell. Some people, it's other issues. So they're all different depending on the actual diagnosis of periodic paralysis. I think there's like a wide variety of them. Thanks everybody for joining. I appreciate it. And please feel free to share my video of my episode, because the more we educate people and the more aware people are if they see someone like me in public, or even if you see me in public. So it's called an ion channelopathy, meaning these diseases may be congenital, often resulting from a mutation or mutations in the encoding genes, so like the literal genes that were encoded in your DNA, or acquired resulting from an autoimmune attack on the ion channel. There are many dysfunctions known to be caused by ion channel mutations. So, I say that to say that the potassium, mine is believed to be hypokalemic periodic paralysis, and that is the potassium regulates the muscle contractions in your body and how it uses nutrients. So the reason I wanted to say all that is to explain, as I get going a little bit more, the fact that why it's not so easy for me to just go, oh, I'm having an episode, and know in advance that that's what's happening to me, because it is a nutrient-based thing, and or the potassium that's in your body can shift, and so you don't necessarily, I'm sure any of you out there don't feel a shift in your body necessarily. So I wanted to first say thank you so much, thank you so much, thank you so much. I have some notes here because I didn't want to forget people's great questions. So I wanted to say thank you so much. Please know how grateful I am. Please share the video. I am interested in doing a fundraiser for periodic paralysis. I'm not sure what that would look like, but I'm thinking, because I can't walk really super far, that I may do like a wheelchair ride thing and see if anybody wants to join me and them walking. I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure that out. If anybody has any ideas, let me know. So, I talked a little bit in the first video of me having the episode about what my symptoms were when my symptoms started as a kid. Now, you don't know when you're having symptoms as a teenager, like migraines. You don't know that there's something else to the migraines. Migraines fall on the same platform as periodic paralysis does, and the majority, my understanding is, and I am uneducated, I am just a patient and person figuring this out, but my understanding is that generally speaking, the majority of periodic paralysis patients had migraines as a kid. Now, that doesn't mean that you have migraines and you have periodic paralysis. You get what I mean. So what's funny is, as a kid, I couldn't stand to be tickled, and I couldn't stand to be scared, and I never knew why. But inside of me, I had this funny shake. So it makes so much sense now that I have PP diagnosis, and I get what that feels like on the inside of me. So when you're getting the flu, or you're getting a cold, or anything like that, you usually don't go, oh, I have the flu. Like, you'll say, I'm not feeling really good, or I'll say me instead of you, but like, I'm just not feeling quite myself, and I don't really know why, or I'm tired. So with PP, it's very much the same way. I may just feel tired, or I just may feel like off, and I don't know. Do I have a cold? Do I have the flu? Am I having an episode? I don't necessarily know, because they present very much the exact same way. And then medications are a huge problem for me, and that's actually, honestly, probably one of the biggest things that I didn't recognize when I was younger, is how my body reacted to medications, and how those medications triggered episodes of either an essential tremor, full body tremor, or like what would look like a seizure, but I'm awake. And in my video that I just posted 2 days ago with my episode, you can see that I have these muscle contractions and what looks like little mini seizures almost. So I do that to an extent that my whole body goes into these muscle contractures. And I literally do this contorting and posturing. My body will bend into a horseshoe, my neck will come way out, and my arms will go places I didn't know I could do. And I honestly can't do them if I wanted to, or was paid to do that. But they do it. And those muscle contractures are a result of the potassium not being enough potassium in my bloodstream or in my muscle. So then the muscles contract. But I don't know that that's happening ahead of time necessarily, like getting the flu or a cold. I do know that there are triggers for that, and I do know that certain things trigger really bad episodes, like salt is a trigger for me, carbs is a trigger. This is for most PP patients, actually, and depending on whether you're hyper or hypokalemic. So the triggers would be exercise. No little exercise causes it. Too much exercise causes it. Personal things cause it. Let's just say that. And as a teen, I couldn't take birth control. Excuse me, I took my potassium. I couldn't take birth control. It caused horrible migraines, which then I was paralyzed from. And at the time, the doctors just said I was crazy. I was making it up. Nothing was wrong. I just had a migraine. Well, then as I went on to get pregnant, I had wonderful pregnancies. All of my pregnancies, I loved being pregnant. But the delivery part was a problem because they give you medications and whatnot, and so that always caused a problem with that. And or when you're sick and you take medications. So as time went on, I was choking on food. I had esophageal dilatation to stretch my esophagus. I had just all these very weird symptoms, and so I would go from one doctor to the next doctor, from a urologist because of bladder and bowel problems, to a urogynecologist because of bladder, bowel, and pelvic and vaginal problems. Then I would go to the cardiologist because I'm having heart palpitations from low potassium, but nobody knew that. And then now I see a nephrologist, which is a kidney doctor, for all of the medications that I take. And that's one of the fears of the physicians, is people that take potassium are going to kill themselves. And like my cardiologist said, you are more likely to die from low potassium than overdoing potassium because it leaks constantly out of my body. There's another reason, though, that I don't necessarily know exactly when they're happening or that they're happening. Because it could be leaking for whatever reason, a variety of reasons, and I don't know that. I just may not feel well, or I may eat something that, unbeknownst to me, contains a lot of salt at a restaurant or something. So I'm learning a lot about drinking liquid potassium, like you saw the other day in my video, to keep me from having an episode when I'm eating. I also wanted to talk about the question. I'm trying to answer the questions and answer them kind of in an order that is congruent or consecutive. So the length of my episodes, I was asked about, all of these are answers to questions. Thank you, people, for the questions. I'm just blessed. I'm so blessed and thankful that I can share this information. And before I forget, hopefully I won't, it's on my notes, but there isn't the Periodic Paralysis Association. You can go to their page and you can look this information up. You can share this information. It is such a rare diagnosis and so unknown that we're just starting to mine what there's only 4 mutations that they test for Invitae, the genetic tester, because they're so rare. And then the researchers, because it's rare, there's no real money coming in for research. So anyone that has funds that you're looking to disperse or to donate, Periodic Paralysis Association would surely appreciate that. And we are working with, Strongbridge Pharmaceuticals came up with the very first medication for periodic paralysis called Keveyis, and it's really benefited a lot of people. And so Strongbridge Pharmaceuticals has been a huge player and backer to periodic paralysis and our association. So that's really exciting. Good morning, guys. Thanks so much for joining. And if you haven't seen it already, I posted a video, I think 2 days ago, about my having an episode. And these are answers to the questions that I had that came in, and then a little bit of background people asked about. So the length of the episodes. So as I've aged, all of this has continued to morph, and my understanding is from my other PP friends that that's very common. So the episodes, the episodes you saw the other day on my video was about 45, well, no, pardon me. The whole night before, when I was in bed, I kept having episodes, and I woke up completely paralyzed, and I could only move my eyes. And that's when I knew, whoa, I'm having a bad episode. But Mike was asleep, and I didn't want to wake him, and I didn't have my fizzy there because I don't need it all the time. And I didn't realize I was having an episode. So I'm not sure how I got to that place, but either way, it doesn't matter. It is what it is. And so when I got up then, I thought I would be okay. And when I showered, it triggered an episode. And so I came out here so I could videotape here on the porch at the Hillside Haven. So I could videotape an episode so that you had a chance, because not everyone has seen them, and people have asked me about them. And I am so thankful for that. Okay. Woo! I have some funny stories to tell you about periodic paralysis as well. So, the episode you saw the other day that actually was from the jerking on the video amount of time was 45 minutes, 45 minutes. However, I had that episode, was having that in the shower, and then I was having that through the night while I was sleeping. So technically that would have probably lasted about 24 hours. And then after I got off the video, I was still recovering from that and had another episode that night. And I was still weak and tired then yesterday and taking extra potassium. So they can last for hours to days. And then as you saw in 2019, that was 3 months, because I had a 2.5-hour episode that had, listen to this one, took 5 firefighters to keep me on a stretcher, not by choice, because I was having full body contractions, muscle contractions, posturing, contorting, and it's like my body bangs like a fish out of water. And so it took 5 firefighters to hold me on a stretcher and get me to the emergency room. And when they did IV Ativan, and it still wasn't working. And so they just kept increasing that. I won't take a lot of medications, funny enough, so some funny stories. So I have been in the hospital so many times. When I used to get the flu and a cold and anything like that, my body, due to the shift in the ion channel, it would cause what I didn't know at the time was paralysis, or I would lose all my potassium, causing paralysis through flu or cold or whatever. And so I've had doctors that have left me out in a hallway. I'll never forget, at St. Joe's, I think, in Joliet. Anyway, they left me on a stretcher in the hallway, flopping around, no one near me. I could tell that story over and over and over. Similar stories like that. And by the way, none of this is like, whoa. This has actually been an incredible blessing of a journey. Painful blessing. That's why I like to say painfully beautiful, because it has taught me so much about humility, compassion, kindness, and to not assume and like be way less judgmental. I wouldn't have thought myself as a judgmental person, but after experiencing this and having to learn and feeling judged by so many people, it's really been a blessing. So this is all informative stuff that I'm going over. So one other funny story was, I had a doctor tell me, this was about 2 years ago, I was in Chicago to visit, and I had an episode, and I was at the emergency room in Naperville, or North Plainfield, and the doctor comes in, and he said, I needed potassium, and the doctor comes in, and he sits down real serious, and he says, I understand you're telling the nurse that you have periodic paralysis. And I said, yes, and he says, you do know it's common among Asian men. I said, as you can see, I'm not Asian, and I'm not a man. And by the way, I see you've been Googling. So when you Google, that's one variety of periodic paralysis. So in other words, he didn't know anything about it, and he went on Google, which is very typical of doctors because they don't know. They go on Google, they look it up, and the first thing that comes up is what they think it is. So if you're ever in a situation like that, assumption is not the best route to go. So, all right. So the next question I had was, does it hurt? Yes, it hurts. It feels similar. This is the best way to tell you. So when you're pumping a bike pump, or you're like working out and you can feel your muscle getting sore, that's the exact same feeling that I get when I'm doing the jerking and the seizing part. It's like I'm pumping a bike and my muscle is just like, give me a break. When I'm done, it feels like you do when you have the flu and you just can't move and you basically hurt all over. It's a different hurt though. It's not the exact same kind of hurt, but that's what it feels like. And the exhaustion and the weakness is identical to like having the flu basically. And there's levels of the paralysis, as you can tell when I was in the video. Although I was getting episodes of paralysis, it looks a lot like weakness as well, but they refer to it as paralysis. I will go into total paralysis. I think I did that in the video once or twice. I think I ended up having a episode of the total paralysis. I look like I fell asleep, and I will just fall over, and then when my potassium shifts again, I come back and I'm awake again. So it does hurt, and I feel exhausted and tired, and it does take days to weeks to recover. I just have to watch my schedule, what I do, how much exercise, what I eat, that sort of thing. And people also ask, yes, I drive. Oh gosh, Jim, somebody says, you're so sorry to have you go through all of this. You're stronger than me. Well, first of all, God doesn't give us more than we can handle. And although that sounds so stupid and cliche, I do strongly believe I have an opportunity in each circumstance to be bitter or to be better. Believe me, I am not some superhero. I have been bitter. I have not been better. I have been angry. I have been outraged. I have been humiliated. I have been treated others out of the pain that I was having as well. So it's really an experience, and each person has to take that journey on their own. Anybody that's ever lost a family member, had a medical condition, or experienced anything knows that it's a personal journey, and you have to figure out for yourself. But ultimately, what are you going to do with the information you have? Whether it's a fight with someone, or you can either acknowledge things, you can either figure it out, work through those stages of grief and move on, or you could be stuck in a stage. I guess it just depends on the person and how they're going to deal with that. For me, I've been bitter. I've been angry. I've been hateful, I think, at times. And without getting into a big, huge story, I was in a marriage where my condition was not acknowledged or accepted, not just by my ex-husband, but by the medical professionals. So he was getting his information from them and not believing me. And so with that happening, ultimately my children saw that as a result. And so for years I lived with being shamed and like I said, hiding in closets and locking doors and blaming myself. I remember, this is sad, I remember hitting myself, punching myself, telling myself, knock it off, you're just crazy. That's so sad, isn't it? That's sad. That's sad. But this is what I can do with where I am now. I can make the best of it, and I know that this is not forever and always. This is just for now. There are people in the hospital that are forever paralyzed, that have been in an accident. There are women and men losing their loved ones. Mamas losing their children. Daddies losing their children. And I'm dealing with some temporary paralysis, and I'll be honest with you. You know what the biggest problem is? It's an imposition. Think about it. If you have the flu, it's an imposition. It's an imposition to what we do with our lives every day. So an interruption. Priscilla Shirer does a series on interruption, the interrupted life. So if I get an interruption in my life, I have an opportunity to do multiple things with that. I'm choosing to be better with that. No matter what it is I'm facing, my goal is to be better with that. Does it hurt? Do I not like it? Is it piss me off? Absolutely. I would be lying to say no. Is it an inconvenience? Is it frustrating? Do I get angry? Absolutely. I deal with all of those emotions. But ultimately, while I'm going through that, I try to remain focused on, I want to move better. I accept what's happening to my body. That's another important thing. When it's happening, for anybody that's watching this that does have any sort of similar condition, because I know this, my video was shared to the Periodic Paralysis Association site and to other PP websites. So I want you to know that when it's happening to your body, the more we fight it and try to deny it, the more it's harder on us, both emotionally, mentally, and physically. So I have learned that if I allow my body, sort of like vomiting, you allow your body to do what it needs to do by releasing those contractions and paralysis, then the easier it is to move through that, I found. I had another good question come up just now, and it says, how does Mike handle all this? That's funny. That's a great question. I have had so many great questions. I am just so thankful, you guys. And please share my video. Know you can share my video. Education, and awareness will help somebody else, that won't have to go through this. So, Mike, when I met him, as with anyone that's been divorced and meeting new men, or meeting women, I guess, too, there's things in our closet that we don't want to share or we don't want to talk about, and you keep those hidden until you realize you're going to go somewhere in the relationship or something. And so with Mike, when I first met him, of course I didn't tell him right away, and then I had to tell him because it was winter in Chicago, and I have a lot of episodes in the winter in Chicago, so I had to tell him what was happening to me. And he was incredibly, first of all, let me say this. He had an issue with certain things because of his past and relationships. And so he really struggled at first on whether this was psychosomatic or a legitimate medical condition. And as he navigated those waters with me, even though we didn't have a diagnosis, and he knew me from my childhood and he knew me from high school, he knew that it was legitimate. It just took him some time to process his past and move into the present with me. So that was an interesting journey for both of us, because in my past I had the same sort of thing, and so it was interesting to work through what that looked like. And we actually did talk about breaking up if he wasn't able to live with that, my episodes, and or acknowledge them, and because I was at a place where I was no longer going to deny what was happening to me. And then even though the doctors didn't have an answer, I was going to accept what was happening and move on with that. So then, not long after meeting Mike, meeting him. Everybody that knows our story knows I met him in 6th grade, and then we were best friends in high school, and I had a crush, and he wouldn't date me. We reconnected after we were both divorced, and then we started dating. Just weeks maybe 8 weeks after we started dating, I had a bad episode in Chicago. And the winters are really hard on my body. I had an episode, and I ended up paralyzed. At the time, I was 40, and going through college after divorce to get my degree and move on with my life. And I actually had to drop out of school 3 weeks before the end of that, basically the end of college. And I couldn't function. I was paralyzed. And so he moved me in with him, and he said to me, this is amazing. He says to me, no commitment, no pressure, just move in, and I will help you, I will take care of you, and I will provide for you. Now tell me that's not a miracle. He loved on me, loved me, supported me, encouraged me, and we worked through all those things. It would be a lie to tell you he was great from the beginning and that I was great from the beginning, because as everybody knows, hey girl, good to see you. Thanks for joining. I'm talking about periodic paralysis, and it would be a lie to tell you that everything's been wonderful, because it's not. And I'm a keep it real kind of girl. That's part of what my kids probably don't like about me, is I'm just going to tell it like it is, and we'll figure it out. But let's do it with grace and honor and love one another, right? That's how we do life, people. Let's do life and do life well, the best we can. Okay, so I'm going on to some more questions. I had an episode the other day, and I posted a video. It's the first time I've ever done a full-length video of an episode, and it was a very vulnerable place for me to be, and just the compassion, sensitivity that I have received has been amazing. Great questions. I have pages of great questions that people have asked me, and I'm trying to address those. And if you haven't seen the video, please go on my page and watch the video of my episode, and please share it, because the more people that know and see this, the better off it is for me if I'm in public, or for anyone else. Thanks for the great questions. I'm actually going to get on. That's a great question, Jim. The question is it genetic, like passing it on to my kids or my grandchildren? That's a great question. So, it can be. In the beginning, I was saying, let's see, where'd that one go? Here it is. So, these diseases, an ion channelopathy is actually the name of I don't know what you call that, but so these diseases may be congenital, often resulting from a mutation or mutations in the encoding genes, or acquired, as often resulting from an autoimmune attack on the ion channel. These are many dysfunctions known to be caused by ion channel mutations. So with that said, there is genetic testing by a company called Invitae that they are doing for periodic paralysis patients. And I think the full gene panel is like 103. I could be wrong. Wendy's going to let me know, or Monica, Linda. And I believe there are 4 variants that they have found that affect periodic paralysis. With that said, recently at the conference in Orlando, the Worldwide Periodic Paralysis Association conference in Orlando last year, the researchers said there are several other variants that they are finding that are connected to periodic paralysis patients, but yet there's no funding in order to bring those variants into testing. They're just seeing them repeated in people with PP, and I believe I am one of those people. I did have the original gene testing done, and out of the variants, it did not show, I think it's called no significant, maybe was the word. But there's a variant, apparently Wendy's telling me, that continues to come up that they're not showing, or is it a mutation? See, I don't know all the terms. I am just figuring it out. So I actually have to call Invitae and ask them a question about that. But it can be genetic. In my case, I don't have that exact answer, because for me, if anybody before me has had it, I do know that my biological father's family had, one of the men had a medical condition with twitching and jerking. And back years ago, nobody knew what that was. And I think they just thought he was drunk or faking it. So my best guess is this, in fact, is a genetic issue for me. And there's family members and I that share a lot of the same symptoms. And so I strongly believe for me that it's genetic. Whether or not it's something we can see yet, I don't know about. I also have my cousin, my first cousin, and I have almost absolutely identical medical problems. Outside of the jerking part of that being the myotonia part. Periodic paralysis on this end of the spectrum, and then paramyotonia congenita, the jerking part, is on this, obviously this is the paralysis, the jerking on this end. And I actually have both, which most people don't. They have one or the other, or if they have this one, they only have hyper, too much potassium, that causes this. I have both, which intersect, and it's created a little bit more of confusion. Monica also has both of those. So we laugh because I think we're like two of a gazillion people. That nobody has it but like the two of us and a couple of others. But my cousin that has similar symptoms to me does not have the jerking part, but has a lot of the weakness and the tiredness, the exercise-induced, medication-induced problems. And so there's probably a genetic component there. When it comes to my children, they have chose not to be tested. They were able to be tested. They chose not to be tested. But I do believe I see symptoms in two of them that I'm aware of. But again, that's, their journey for them. So they have to figure that out. But I do see symptoms in two of them. And I actually, in one of them, I saw their symptoms growing up as I was raising them, but I didn't know I had it. Now I look back and go, I bet. So my best guess is I'll see that come out in either one of them. Possibly. Another interesting component is if you have genetic testing and it doesn't pick up a variant that is not conclusive to you not having periodic paralysis, this is where it gets real tricky. It doesn't mean you don't have periodic paralysis. Also, as the researcher said, there are tons of, well, I don't say tons, but there are people that have periodic paralysis genes that are not exhibiting symptoms of periodic paralysis. So this is where the research is necessary and the funding is necessary for research for periodic paralysis. And at the same time, that there's so much confusion with medical professionals because a gene doesn't mean you don't have it, and a gene that shows up doesn't mean you're going to have symptoms of it. And so it's very kind of an oxymoron, I guess, I would say. Leanne might correct me. Hi, guys. Thanks for joining. I'm so thankful that you're joining. I posted a video the other day of me having an episode. If you've not seen it, please go to my page and feel free to share this. Education, and awareness. Awesome. I'm so thankful. So today's video is updating you on how I feel and answering 4 pages of questions that people gave me resulting from the video, and I'm so thankful. If you have any information, you can also go to Periodic Paralysis Association. If you're an individual that has money, that is interested in funding a good cause, they are looking for funding, and so anything would be beneficial. I'm also hoping to do a fundraiser if anybody has any really good ideas. We can't, obviously all us periodic paralysis patients can't do a ton of walking, so I thought about doing like a wheelchair run or a wheel and run or a rock and roll or something. I don't know. Has anybody got any ideas? Anybody good at fundraising that wants to help me figure out what that would look like to raise some cash, moolah, dough to help out some researchers? That would be awesome. And if you go on Periodic Paralysis Association, you'll also find out how rare this is and how there's only so many hundred of us that we're aware of. However, there's tons of people that probably have symptoms that aren't aware that they have periodic paralysis. I saw a video last year in Orlando at a hospital. Some kid who was in his 20s was posting a video of his dad at the emergency room, and his dad was on the stretcher in the room. And this is no joke, and this is a life I've lived, so I get it. And the dad is on the bed, completely paralyzed, right? And his arm is to his side like this, and the son's videotaping this. The medical staff was so mean to him. The doctor picks up his arm, drops it, and says, "I'm on to you. I know that you're here for more drugs, and you're wasting our time and our money. So you need to get your crap figured out and get out of here. I'm not giving you any drugs." This doctor is yelling at this patient on video while the son's videoing. And I'm watching, and the son says, he doesn't do drugs, which is me. I don't do drugs. Matter of fact, drugs make me worse. So, hope is my only dope that I do. Hope is my dope, and that's it. So, I wrote to the radio station. I called the radio station. I was like, I think I know what this guy has. Somebody let him know. I don't know if it ever got anywhere. I didn't hear anything, but that's regular treatment. I had doctors for 30 years tell me when I told them I can feel something happening in my body. They said that's impossible. I said, no, I can feel it. Something's leaking out of me. When I finally got diagnosed with Dr. Stephen Lewis in Philadelphia, the neurologist, who he was the third neurologist to diagnose me, but he's like a big-time player in the periodic paralysis world. Dr. Lewis said, that's called the dump, and yes, you feel it. I was like, yeah, affirmation, woo-hoo, woo-hoo. So he told me that's very true, that's what I feel. So, all right, I'm going to move on to your questions. I'll come back to rambling later. All right, so the next question was, let me get to it. I did mistreatment, misdiagnosis. So, I moved here. People ask about triggers. So, triggers are, for me, are salt, sugar, exercise, anything that stimulates, like if you shock me. Matter of fact, the neurologist does the little knee thing, immediately sends me into an episode. So I have to be very careful with physical exercise and the amount of exercise. I love to exercise, so I have to be careful. I love to run. I love to ride a bike, walk the beach. All of that will cause an episode. But I'm learning. If I take extra potassium, long-acting are the pills. Oh, I just took them, so I can't show it to you. So I take the long-acting 25 MEQ. If I take those, and I know I'm going to do a bunch of exercise, that will really help try to keep my level stable. And then I prepare an emergency fizzy that you probably saw in the video the other day of 25 fast-acting MEQ of potassium, and I have 2 or 3 Effort K ready to go. And I'll just drink those as I'm riding a bike or if I'm at the beach, because the water, being in the water is a lot of work on my body. And that will really help. I have another good question somebody just posted. Please post your questions. I'm loving this. This is so therapeutic, and as Leanne says, cathartic. I am so thankful for the love and the support. So another question. So does the paralyzing happen right after the dump? Man, your questions are great, you guys. No. So, yes and no. That's a funny question. I mean, that's a funny answer. So, when I feel the leaking, I'm trying to think of a way to describe that. It's sort of like, as goofy as this is going to sound, like before you have to go to the bathroom, and you're like, uh-oh, nature's calling, gotta go. So I feel the dump, and then I'm like, uh-oh, I better find a place to sit down. I better find a place to lay down because I'm about to have an episode. But I don't have enough time to go get a fizzy. I don't have enough time, generally speaking, to do anything else but find a safe place to lay down because I don't know, am I going to have a 2-minute episode, a 45-minute? Well, they don't happen for 2 minutes, but you get my point. Or am I going to have like a 3-hour episode where I flop all over and I can injure my head? So I try to find like a really safe place to get to and just wait there. And if somebody's around during that very beginning minute, I will text help. And if somebody's around or if Mike's here, I'll just call Mike. I need a fizzy, and he'll get it for me. That brings me to my dog. So I'm working with Nala. She's actually already detecting my scent. You could see that in the video the other day. She's detecting when my potassium is low and letting me know. Or maybe not ahead of time, but she's figuring out that the scent is different. So I am teaching her to get my fizzy. But when I'm going paralyzed, I can only say, like you could saw in the video, fizzy, fizzy, fizzy. I can't really talk to say, go get my fizzy. So I'm trying to practice with her by just saying, fizzy, fizzy, and having her go get my fizzy out of the fridge or off the counter. Because I usually always have them prepared in the fridge or on the counter. And then usually if I go anywhere, for anybody that goes with me anywhere, sees me in public, I usually always have a fizzy on me. It looks like it's in a water bottle. It's in the house, so I can't show you. I didn't think about show and tell. So, but otherwise, I will have a packet on me of looks just like an effervescent, what do you call them things? Effervescent stomach tablets or whatever. It's in a little package, and it will be on my purse, on my dog, or on my person. And I have one in my rear view mirror hanging up, and I have them on my purse and in my purse. So they go in about 6 to 8 inches of water, shake that puppy up really good, get rid of the fizz, and then just keep squirting that in my mouth. And eventually then that quick acting potassium will get into my bloodstream and level back out my potassium. Great question. Great question. But it doesn't mean I'm going to have a bad episode, if that makes sense. It just means I can feel it leaking out. Or a large dump leaking out. What was I had another question here. Potassium affects... So the potassium affects muscle contraction and nutrient absorption. So it actually affects everything then. And the potassium, sodium, and magnesium in the ion channel or in the cell, there's a gateway, a voltage gateway, and they go back and forth like through a door, an enter and an exit. And so if one is off, then the other isn't right. So if the potassium's off, the magnesium's usually off, and vice versa, or the salt. So it's not as easy as just the potassium, or I have to be cautious, should I say, of the salt and the magnesium and the potassium to try to keep them all stable. So basically everything I eat or everything I do, I'm monitoring and watching physically, internally. I talked to somebody that had diabetes and or insulin issues, and I think it's very similar to that. I think they can feel their sugar drop, and for years they thought I had hyperactive hypoglycemia or sugar issues. So they had me checking my sugar, and I actually went into the hospital, no joke, and I did a 72-hour fast. Which, by the way, if you do a 72-hour fast at a hospital, it's 80 hours by the time they feed you again. So I went into the hospital and did a 72-hour fast, and they had an IV of strictly fluid, no food or liquids, or you know what I'm talking about. Which I can't have saline IVs either. So, nor when I get a blood test, I can't have the tourniquet on. So for anybody that's checking their potassium levels in their bloodstream, You typically do not want a tourniquet on your arm. A tourniquet gives a false reading for potassium as it shoves the potassium into the bloodstream out of the muscle, and that's not going to give you an accurate reading. Whew, that's a lot of information. So for anybody just joining us, because people keep coming on, is I did a video of my episode the other day, and if you haven't seen it, you can see it on my Facebook page. And I had tons of questions. I am so thankful for that. Tons of compassion, and I'm so thankful for that. So if you want to see it, you can go on, and if you don't, that's okay. This is a follow-up. Please also, if at all for any reason you want to share my video, I'm giving everybody the world permission. Share the video. Share the video. Share the video. Because the more people that see that episode that may know somebody. Matter of fact, somebody wrote to me the other day, my girlfriend's daughter is having symptoms like you. What did you do? So just this video could have really helped somebody's life change. That's my goal. And awareness, education and awareness. So on to another story. So I was, obviously I told you that the potassium affects the muscle constricture. So when I lived in Illinois, it caused all my muscles to seize up. And so for 3 years, I couldn't feel my legs. Felt like I had blood pressure cuffs at the top of my legs. And they were constricted. I was in physical therapy. I was in, believe it or not, they do like a female physical therapy for your bladder. And I was in that physical therapy. And all kinds of physical therapy for my muscles. But nothing was giving me the feeling back in my legs. And I also developed neuropathy from having that issue. But at that time, because I was losing control of my bowel and my bladder, they were trying to figure out what they could do to get those to work properly. Because 45-year-old woman should be having those types of problems without knowing what the medical condition is or being able to treat it. So eventually we moved here per the actually I had a prescription from my neurologist in Chicago, because he told me that he did not know if he would be able to unstick me the next time I was completely paralyzed. And so he said, you really need to move to where the weather's warm, since you know the cold weather affects you. So we moved to Florida. Mike picked up his whole life, 27 years at the same company in Chicago. I picked up my life. We left our children, 6 children, adult children, however, it's family. We left our parents and loved ones, and we moved to Florida for my health, for a better quality of health. And what an amazing transition it has been. When I got to Florida, somebody asked me how I got diagnosed. That's what I'm getting. So when I got to Florida, I had in Illinois, I had a chiropractor trying to work on my hips to see if we could get the blood flow to the bowel and the bladder and my legs. And so we moved to Florida, and I went to see this chiropractor, and he literally did his thing. And then when I sat up, Jim, I felt the dump. Jim had just asked me about the dump. So I felt the total dump, but like a really strong dump. And I says to the chiropractor, uh-oh, quick, I gotta lay down. And so I laid down on the ground because I knew what was coming next, full body flopping, because I could feel how bad this was. The chiropractor, while he's watching me do this, he's looking at me and he's making notes, and he says, I think I know what this is. I think this is an ion channelopathy. And I said, I didn't know what that was. So after that appointment, then he set me up with a neurologist that he knew. During this period of time, I was seeing a urogynecologist in Orlando who wanted to put a nerve stimulator in my spine to stimulate the nerves to my bowel, my bladder, and my legs. And I refused, because at the time she couldn't tell me what was wrong with me, and she said it's experimental and it's not used for that, but she wanted to try it. I'm not your guinea pig. So I refused. Thank goodness I refused. Once I got diagnosed with the chiropractor, well, he was guessing. He sent me to the neurologist. He diagnosed me, and then he sent me to another neurologist for what's called an EMG, or an electro something graph. I don't know. Wendy, what's an EMG stand for? Wendy's on here. She's a fellow PP lady. Hey, girl. So this is an update to my video the other day, because I've had so many wonderful questions and inquiries. I want to get to those answers. I'm trying. Okay, so I had an EMG, which caused episodes because you're sticking needles. They stick needles into your muscle, and then they stimulate that with electrical current to see what your muscle does on this graph. Now, that does not mean if it shows up on the graph you have periodic paralysis, and if it don't, you don't. It's just another tool they use in some of their diagnostic tools. So he sticks all the needles in my arm. Well, I start flopping around all over the place, and he's never seen it. He's like, yeah, I think you probably do have it. So then he also diagnosed me. He was my neurologist for quite a few years, but he was refusing to refill my potassium for the fear I was going to kill myself, because he doesn't know anything. And he's a neurologist. I'd like everyone to know he's a neurologist, but he didn't know about PP. So it is uncommon to doctors, and they're just not aware, or they're unwilling, or they just haven't learned yet. Okay, Wendy says an EMG is a diagnostic procedure to assess the health of the muscles and the nerve cells that control them, the motor neurons. They do it by sticking little needles in you and sending an electric current. I've had them on my arms, on my legs. Okay, another story. So last year, or 2 years ago, Mike and I were sent to a hospital called Shands up here in Gainesville to see a different neurologist who supposedly have more experience with PP. I don't know. I don't trust everybody until I see them. This doctor sends me for an EMG. I go to get the EMG. Oh, Nala's playing with something. I go to get the EMG, and the doctor literally, the one sticking the needles in my arm, because he apparently has never seen PP, I start twitching. He starts moving the needles. Then he picks up my arm and drops it when I was paralyzed. And then while I'm paralyzed and I'm not moving, he's pushing the needle around like this. That's not part of an EMG, people. They put the needle in and they send the current. They don't move the sucker around like they're trying to find gold in a mine. So anyway, you could tell he didn't know. And then he didn't know what to do with me, so he says, we're done, and whatever. So, yeah, I had negative E. Oh, and Linda had one. That's so funny. So our fearless leader, as we call her, Linda Feld, is the president of Periodic Paralysis Association. She has had PP for, Linda, I don't even know how many years she has had PP, but for a long time. And Wendy, and she's in a wheelchair. Her body's basically completely paralyzed. I think she has the use of her hands and a few other things, I think, but she is in a wheelchair all the time. And it says here that she had a negative EMG as well. Oh, so Wendy says a standard EMG only catches 20% of us with PP, like I said. But because it's so rare, the doctors think, oh, I'm going to get the answer in this EMG. And they don't realize that all the diagnostic tools that are used. And there is no one test for periodic paralysis. That's part of the reason I think that they have such a hard time figuring out how to get an answer to us, because there isn't a blood test that does it. Although our potassium can shift and you can see the lows in there now and again, it's not accurate to periodic paralysis. And just because you have low potassium, or because you don't have low potassium, you don't have PP. So it's very confusing. It's basically sort of like MS, and the fact that you go years and years and years and years and years with these symptoms, without ever really having answers. navigating what that looks like until so many of those symptoms have been over a period of time, and then they give you potassium and see how you react to potassium as well. So it's interesting. Okay, I think I'm down to our last couple of questions. So unless anybody has any other questions they want to post, please feel free to ask. I've had so many people text me, call me, IM me, and then send messages on this thing here. Please feel free to ask any questions. Nothing is off limits. Awareness and education is my goal. If you have not seen the video I posted 2 days ago of me having an episode of hypokalemic periodic paralysis and paramyotonia congenita, please feel free to go on and watch it and share it. I would love that. I'm looking to do a fundraiser. I just don't know what that would look like, so I'm inviting anybody that may know about fundraising, how to do it, what it looks like, or what would be a good fundraiser, because it can't be a fun run for all us periodic paralysis patients, but we could do like a wheelchair ride or a rockin' wheel, or I don't know. Has anybody got any ideas on what that would look like? Help me out. I'd love to do it. So, all my people, I think I've pretty much given you, there is a support group. Yes, I do go to a support group for periodic paralysis. We created one when I came to Florida. Linda and I got together and created a support group. You can also go to the Periodic Paralysis Association website and get more information there as well. And I explained to you there are different variants. There's a lot of information on there. There are a list of doctors and tools. Someone had asked me yesterday, or told me yesterday, their friend's daughter are having these kinds of symptoms. What should she do? You can go to the Periodic Paralysis website and you can actually find resources in whatever area you're in. Now, with that said, there are only a very few doctors that are familiar with PP, and so you may be in an area where you don't have a doctor. Like, we did not have a doctor in Orlando that knew about how to treat PP or really knew about it. Like I said, my neurologist thought he was going to kill me on potassium. So I was going to Philadelphia to see Dr. Stephen Lewis to receive treatment. However, we are so blessed and so honored that Dr. Navita Girath has transplanted herself from, I believe, Iowa or somewhere in the north to Orlando to start a muscular dystrophy clinic. And she has experience with periodic paralysis, and she has taken so many of us under her wing, and we are just so grateful for that. I love her too. She's just amazing. She witnessed several of my episodes, and she put me on that new medication for the myotonia, the jerking, because I was having so many full body episodes. She put me on that medication, Mexilotine, that is caused me to gain a little bit of weight, but it stopped the huge fish out of water flopping around stuff. So I'm grateful for that medication. Okay. The last thing I think I wanted to talk about was two last things that people were asking me about work. How do I work? So I am a realtor, and I'm fortunate because I can work from home a majority of the time. Almost, I could do 100%, I guess, and go to the office when necessary. I do have an office in Lake Mary. I do have a home office, so I can work from home. I have showed houses in my wheelchair. I have showed houses when I'm in my wheelchair, I'm not necessarily able to drive because I'm obviously too weak. So people will pick me up and then take my wheelchair out of the car for me, and I'll use my wheelchair and still do real estate. There are times that I'm unable to do that because I'm just too weak or tired or paralyzed. So my co-workers will step in and they will take over my clientele for me and assist me in showings and assisting me in what it is that I need. So I'm very blessed, and I am very honest with all my customers, and most of my customers come to me because they know me and they've been referred to me, and so they already know about my condition, but I do have that conversation with them so that they're prepared, that they know I'm not ignoring them if I don't answer right away, that's what's happening. Sorry about that. So with that said, Mike and I have been renovating here, as you all have seen, our DIY dummy page. Mike and I have been renovating, demo and renovating our house here at the Hillside Haven to make that modified for mobility. We found out when I was in the wheelchair last year that there was a lot that I wasn't able to do. And just for those that are doing anything with architecture or engineer, please, when you're putting paper towels up in a bathroom in a handicap stall, the suggestion would be that they would be low, not up high. I went to Target and was in the wheelchair, in the handicap stall, washed my hands, and I cannot find paper towels. I look and they're like 3 feet in the air. I couldn't get up to get them. So all you engineers or anybody trying to do architecture or builders or whatever, get in a wheelchair or have a wheelchair individual help you in designing that. So Mike and I have been working really hard here to make the house wheelchair accessible and modified to mobility. So because I am in the wheelchair regularly, even if it's just to take some of the pressure off my muscles, like the other day when I had the episode and I really couldn't do a lot of walking after that. So I'll ride around in the wheelchair, and that gives my muscles some rest. Okay, last but not least, unless anybody has any other questions, Wendy did answer and said Dr. Girath said she will take PP patients nationwide via telehealth. So, Shannon, that answers your question about your girlfriend's daughter. So, that may be a good resource for you. If you need any more information, anybody wants any more information, please continue to ask me questions. View my video on Facebook from 2 days ago. And share the video. Please, please, please share the video for awareness and education. Lastly, but not leastly, unless anybody has any questions, would be my sweet Nala. So I had been told for years that I needed a service dog, but I am allergic to German Shepherd. I'm allergic to dogs. I'm allergic to cats, and I'm allergic to chemicals. I'm allergic to a lot of stuff, which is most PP patients, right, Miriam? So, fortunately, so when I was in Philadelphia, Dr. Lewis told me that it was pretty much mandatory that I needed to get a service dog. So anyway, Mike and I started investigating it, and honestly, Dr. Lewis said, take an allergy pill. You need a service dog. So that was pretty much what we were going to do. And then everybody that knows we rescued little sweet Nala. She's out here on her leash. But we rescued Nala, and when we rescued her and we brought her home, and I was, doing normal stuff like fetch with her. There she is. There's Nala. I was doing fetch with her. I noticed that after I threw the toy 2-3 times, she knew to bring it back to me. Like she was catching on real quick. So we watched her for a bit, and she was really catching on. So we reached out. My friend Monica and I had been discussing service dogs, and she also was wanting one. She had already been looking into trainers, and so Monica got a trainer, and his name is John, and I can't think of his last name. And Wendy, do you know John's name? Oh, McGrath. John McGrath. He is actually a dog trainer that trained police dogs to find drugs and attack and all of that. So we hired John to train Nala as our service dog, my service dog. And so she is just almost done with service dog training because COVID hit, obviously. And so we have not had our last Canine Good Citizen test. And we have not had our service dog certification paper given to her yet. So I'm waiting on that because of COVID. Other than that, I think that clears it up. If anybody has any questions, please reach out. This video was for awareness and education and to answer a lot of questions that I got. Thank you for those questions. Thank you for the knowledge, for wanting to be aware and educated. And please go back to my Facebook page and see my video from 2 days ago. I had an episode, and share. And anybody that is interested in fundraising, we need funds for research. So if you have any money that you want to allocate to Periodic Paralysis Association, if you know anybody that's into fundraising that wants to help me or educate me in trying to create a fundraiser or fundraiser awareness, or a documentary. A documentary. That would be amazing. There was a movie that Mike and I watched called Ode to Joy, where the guy went paralyzed as a result of experiencing joy. And some people go paralyzed for fear and all that. This guy went for a paralyzed for joy. And so the movie is called Ode to Joy. O-D-E to Joy. So if anybody wants to do a documentary or anything else like that, please reach out to me. I did send my file to Chasing the Cure last year. I was accepted. However, they went into hiatus, so I don't know if they're going to start again this year or not, and whether or not my file will be aired. So keep me in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you for catching up. All my love. And if you haven't seen the video, please go back to my Facebook page, check it out, and share, share, share. Thanks, guys. Love ya. Thanks for all the questions. Keep them coming. All right. Have a blessed and beautiful day. Bye.